Thank you, Ohio. It's 6 p.m. where I am right now, 10 a.m. your time. So thank you very much for having me. Appreciate picking me to speak about PHP 8. Very excited to speak to you all, and let's definitely get started here. I will reserve, some time at the end of this talk for any questions that may come up. Please go ahead and drop them in the Discord. I will say definitely jump in the Discord channel because at the end I am giving away a prize. There is a special question if you get the right answer. So, well, the first person has the right answer anyway. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. So the talk outline for today, we have basically everything about PHP 8 and PHP 8.1. Gabrielle had a great talk at the last PHP Japan conference. If you haven't caught that, I definitely recommend taking a look at that as well. Let me just mute that. So the outline here is going to be first talking about the release schedule. Then we'll be talking about features in PHP 8. Then we'll speak about all the breaking changes that are going to come with PHP 8 and 8.1. All the great features that are going to come with PHP 8.1 and resources that I found useful for this talk, as well as some other resources that are kind of outside of just PHP 8, just more PHP in general that I think would be very helpful, and some shout outs at the end for some of the people behind PHP 8. So who am I? I'm Joshua Ray Copeland. I've been programming for a long time now. Pretty much when I was a teenager, just loved programming. I have 10 years of PHP experience, kind of originally started in .NET and Java, and just gravitated towards PHP and the awesome open source PHP community. And ever since, just been loving it. I'm the CTO of Remote Dev Force, which is my own company. I've been doing freelance software development for about 5 years now. We do AWS, cloud setup, Symfony, Laravel development, and all kinds of other great things. I'm also the user group leader of PHP Vegas. In fact, a while back when they had ZenCon here in Vegas, I had the pleasure of meeting one of your co-organizers, Noriko Yamamoto. She's awesome. Shout out to her for helping host this. Also a husband. I'm a father of 2 kids. I love skateboarding, collecting vintage and Yeezys. And you may find the one elephant that I created a while back. It's the special PHP holographic elephant that I created. And also just wanted to shout out, I've been reading this book, Musashi. Awesome book. So far, I love it. Japanese culture is awesome. Those are my 2 beautiful kids, beautiful wife. We were just out in Utah. It's awesome out there to go hiking. Again, my company. If you ever need to hire software developers or you're looking for side work, we're always open. So shout out to me at joshuaremotedevforce.com or get connected with me on Twitter at OGProgrammer. So let's dive right in. The PHP Life Cycle for 8, basically last year it was released. The end of life is coming up next year, and it will be maintained for security patches up into 2023, which is the typical kind of life cycle they have for any major versions. This is a really helpful page. You can go to php.net supported versions, and you can always see this is an old screenshot, but you can see a kind of a rolling timeline of where you are at, and you should never be in that gray area. If you are, you need to yell at your boss to upgrade PHP immediately. So the reason you want to upgrade often is because updating your servers later and trying to do a giant leap is just going to cause lots of headaches. So the more you can upkeep and keep your things, towards the latest and greatest, the happier you'll be. So if you're not aware, there's major, minor, and patch versions. This came from Sebastian Bergman, creator of PHP Unit, but I like this tweet he sent because it explains a lot of how the upgrade process works. If it's a major version, be very scared. There's going to be a lot of things you need to fix. The number in the middle and the number at the end typically don't require you to fix much. So minor and patches. So check your logs for deprecations. This is kind of definitely step one. If you are not doing this, do it, right? If you're not aware of all of the things that your system needs to be updated for in future versions, then this is going to cause just lots of changes that need to come down all at once. So trying to slowly maintain and keep your code base up to date is the goal here. So even with my developers, I always encourage, hey, if you see something even not related to your changes, if it's easy to fix and things, go ahead and include it if we can become more future-proof. You can access beta downloads. So for example, PHP 8.1, you can go to /downloads and start to check out the latest and greatest there, and PHP 8 stable versions as well. And I encourage to contribute to PHP. Their GitHub page is, a great starting point for you to read through. And if you don't know C, it's a good place to start learning it and also help contribute back to the community. So PHP 8 features. The big upgrades coming to PHP 8 basically are the JIT compiler, just-in-time compiler, attributes, which is an awesome feature that's been added. We'll dive into more details on all of these here in a second. Named arguments, match expressions, throw expressions, a new static return type, union types, as well as a new mix type. So PHP's other updates worth noting are constructor property promotion, inheritance with private methods, Weakmap implementation, calling class statically on objects, and null safe operators, non-capturing catches for exceptions, trailing commas in parameter lists, which were for arrays originally, and now you can do them in parameters when calling a function or a method. Create datetime object from inheritance or interface, a new stringable interface, and a new stir contains function. How long have I been waiting for this one? So other things are stir starts with, like your string starts with or string ends with, just helpful functions now for those sorts of things. fdiv, division related. We'll dive again into these here in a second, but some other debug related things that are great. Abstract methods in traits fix. There's kind of a weird thing that was going on with that, and they've patched that up. Objects with token get all. Variable syntax tweaks, type annotations for internal functions, and then the extension for JSON is now built into PHP when you, basically download it, compile it. So let's start with all of these and dive into each one of them. The JIT compiler stands for just in time. You probably know that PHP is an interpreted language. It's not like C or Java or Rust program. It's not compiled. Instead, it's translated into machine code, stuff that the CPU actually understands. A JIT is just a technique that will compile parts of the code at runtime so that the compiled version can be used instead. This is also, there's basically now something called a monitor that's built into PHP. And this looks at all the code that's running. And when this monitor detects parts of your code that are re-executed over and over, it's going to mark these parts of your code as warm. And then based on that frequency of it getting called all the time, it will actually compile those hot parts as optimized machine code, and then using that on the fly instead of the translated code. So this just is a great performance boost. and it's great for code like ran over and over. You're not going to see like huge boosts like WordPress sites or anything like that, unfortunately. But if you're using PHP for math or complex things to compile, you will see some performance boosts if you have like an algorithm that gets called over and over. More performance outside of web languages, like I said, so your workers and stuff like that will really benefit from this. And this can just be improved over time to help with other things and just keep pushing PHP speed faster and faster. You can learn more about just JIT compilers in general. Mozilla's got a great course on it. Definitely recommend that if you're more want to learn more about the JIT compiler outside of even PHP. So there are some downsides. The JIT compiler is very complex. It adds a lot of complexity to PHP's source. There was some pushback actually from even adding this in the first place, but again, it has huge benefits, so it was added. When a bug pops up though, updates may take some time to fix for the JIT compiler because the bus factor, aka how many people does it take to get hit by a bus before nobody can maintain this feature anymore, is really Dimitri and Zev. So again, one of the downsides, it's not going to help your, WordPress site or your Symfony or Laravel site that's more front-end stuff, but your back-end code will benefit perhaps a little bit from this. So unfortunately, you're not going to see those same performance boosts going from 7 to 8 as you did from 5 to 7. One of the great things in PHP 8, I would say is probably one of my favorite, is attributes. So attributes are commonly known as annotations in other languages, and it offers a way to add metadata to classes without having to parse doc blocks. Now here you're seeing what was originally going to be the attributes, this double at, because there was a lot of drama actually behind this. Originally, double at was what everyone picked, and then there basically was some issues that crept up with it, and now the final syntax is the hashtag and then your brackets there. So if you want to read more about kind of all of what happened here, you can definitely take a look at the internal notes with Derek and things like that popped up with this. But essentially, here's what it now looks like. So here is a Doctrine Entity, one of my favorite ORMs. And originally, you'd have comments driving features in your code, which seems a little dirty, right? Like, why are my comments kind of controlling like my actual features that my class and my methods or whatever are doing? So other languages have had built-in things for attributes, and PHP in its infinite wisdom, as always, taking great things from other languages and implementing it in ours, has added now a built-in way to do these attributes. So here at the top, you see we have ORM entity, ORM table, and it's all wrapped with this hashtag, open bracket, close bracket. No more putting, comment, you're opening a comment, then an at tag, and then all of this stuff, and then reflection, which again, that's the worst part about the way that was done, is just how slow reflection is, because it literally just has to take the file and then like parse the file for these annotations. So now it's all built right in. So it's awesome stuff. Again, one of my favorite upgrades. So one cool thing, you can create all your own attributes now, right? So creating an attribute class is as simple as this. You basically just say that hashtag attribute, and then you say what you can put the attribute on. So in this case here, this attribute can be added to classes, but you could also say this attribute here could be on methods and functions or functions. And there's a bunch of different flags here that you can basically say, have it on any of them, which is a target all, or is repeatable. So is it possible to have this attribute more than once? Which I'm sure there's use cases for, but yeah. So awesome stuff. Here's some of the internals that are behind how PHP's attributes, parameters, and the type system works. But there are a lot of details in these slides. I did post the slides in the Discord. So some of these slides I might just kind of be flying past, but feel free to open up the slides for later reference if you wanted to dive into more detail on some of these things. So built-in attributes just opens up the ability to add all of your own custom core attributes, as well as PHP's own built-in attributes for PHP core itself. So eventually in the future, you could see something like have the just-in-time compiler compile this or manage this class, or this is deprecated, and perhaps anything in there gets logged or something like that. You know, and basically anything to your heart's content. You can write your own attributes and really do some neat things with this. So definitely recommend taking a look at it in more detail. So let's just kind of show, you know, how attributes can really help. So here is a event listener. We have basically like a shopping cart, right? So when the shopping cart gets an item added or removed, or there's a started event when the shopping cart first opens, then you have all these methods that have to listen to all these particular events. This is a lot of code, right? Now, with attributes, you could just right above each method say, this method subscribes to this event. So no longer having to wire up listeners, wire up events in other areas of the code. You're keeping everything in one place, right? So the method that gets called when the event gets fired, literally right above the event declaration, is what event and what's being, you know, what attribute you're subscribing to. So keeping things in all together in the same place, it's just going to be easier to read code down the road. So another great feature in PHP 8, named arguments. So this was closely contested. It barely passed RFC. Named arguments, aka named parameters, allow you to pass in values to a function by specifying the actual value's name. So you don't have to actually take their order into consideration. So here's an example here. We have a function foo, and we have a ABCD as arguments being, you know, that are all strings. A couple of them are null. Now, you could, maybe not necessarily recommended to abuse this feature, but you could, instead of passing ABC, now you can pass BAD. So it doesn't have to be in the order that you're actually passing these parameters in. You could pass in B's value by putting B colon and then the value of B, then A colon and the value of A, and it will PHP will reorganize those and send them in the correct way. Now, here's another example. Perhaps if some people are confused about this, we have a set cookie function, right? Here's where I can see it being useful. You have a bunch of things that some method or function can take, right? But let's say you only need something that's later down in the list and you really don't care about anything else as far as the parameters, the arguments before. So in this case, you know, let's look at the bottom right where it says old. We had to pass in the name, which was test. And let's say the value empty string is really all we needed, but it's already the default. However, old PHP, we had to put empty string and then the expiration of the cookie, right? So now, instead of having to put this optional argument, which we really don't need, we can just, at the top right here, you see set cookie, name, the name of the cookie, expires, and then the time, and no need to actually define this argument in between here. So that could be useful, right? There are some other examples here as well. You know, basically, I think all in all, you probably don't want to be using this everywhere, right? But it's something that could be powerful. Like in this case, let's say you have an array, you can use the varadic function ... in front of the array, which kind of explodes the array out into arguments that get passed in. And this could work, right? As long as your keys are the same. But you have to watch out, because if you have some unknown property in that array and you call that, there's going to be an error that's thrown, as you see here on the right. So just be a little careful with named arguments. Again, it's a great feature but you just have to use it very sparingly, just where you really need it. I would not say everywhere again, right? So, so one little gotcha with this, named arguments, it'll deal with it in a pragmatic way where it changes during inheritance. So take this example where we have an interface, there's a function on event handler, and then you have on my event, my handler as from a class that's actually inheriting this interface. So if you decide to use name arguments using the parent's name, it's going to result basically in a runtime error. So what you just need to make sure that you're being careful. I would not like rename arguments in a class that's inheriting like an interface or something. Try to keep all of those consistent. But basically, this is just ways to prevent a major breaking change when all of the inherited arguments would have to keep that same name. So match expressions. This is another great one. Basically, it's a cleaner switch expression. So now you can basically say result equals and then match, and then pass in, just as you would into a switch statement, the value you want to test. But before, with switch statements, you have to put case 1, case 2, case 3. Now with matches, you can actually put all of the possible things. In this case right here, if the value is 1, 2, or 3, we will return back world. If it doesn't match anything that's passed into match here, it's going to return the default at the bottom here, which is Mars, right? It's just like a way of keeping things a little cleaner now. If you have something that you want to, if you have something that has multiple values that could be it, and you want to pass just one of those, this is something that I think is very helpful. So it's just more of an improvement to switch expressions. Now you can throw expressions. Before PHP 8, you couldn't use the throw in an expression, meaning you'd have to do an explicit check. So now you can use it like an expression. So take this into consideration, PHP 7.4 on the left and then PHP 8 on the right. Before, you'd have to say, hey, does this value have something? If it is not set, let's throw an exception. Well, now you can just in one line say input bar. If that doesn't have anything, then throw the exception all in one line. So again, cleaner code. That's a great thing about PHP 8. A lot of these features are just going to make you be able to write cleaner code, more concise, condensed code, rather than having to do all of these kind of checks and then throw this. So it's a great thing that was added as well. This I've been wondering when they were going to add, but yeah, static return types. So now you can, in a static method, say return new static, and that will return itself essentially, like it's constructing it sort of thing. Now there's union types as well. This is awesome. So if you had something that could be a string or integer, you'd have to just leave off, like we see here at the top, and then in the comments put string int as the param, right? Well, now with PHP 8, your code is self-documenting. Well, we're almost getting to the point to where we don't need to actually write like all this param and return comments above functions and methods because the code speaks for itself. With PHP 8 here at the bottom, you can see this function accepts a string or an integer separated by that pipe character you see there. And then, we can return a string with which we've had those return types, but now we can return multiple, or even when inputs accept multiple. Let's say you have one that can accept all kinds of things, an object or an integer. I'm not sure why you would have that, but there are some cases, right? So with PHP 7.4 in the past, you'd have input, could be anything. But now with this new mixed type, I guess, if you want to call it that, you can say mixed and it'll accept any of those. So kind of neat. It basically is any of this: array, boolean, callable, it's everything. So again, there could be cases. I can definitely see this useful, libraries and stuff like that, testing things. Perhaps they may take advantage of that. Constructor property promotion. This was before, again, what your code would look like. You'd have to define public float XYZ. Then you'd have to put all the defaults in the constructor here for 0. And then you'd have to say X equals X, Y equals Y, Z equals Z. Come on, it's so much code. Now with PHP 8, you can all do this in one nice little method here, right? So in construct, you can say public float. You could put private, protected, whatever, right? And then all of your types and the variable, and then what the default value is. This auto-magically will do exactly what you see here on the left. It will assign X to X. It will have that as a public. Awesome feature, right? Again, cleaner code, more concise. That's kind of the theme with PHP 8. Inheritance with private methods. So a fatal would happen when you try to override a final private method. This isn't valid since you can't override a private method. So now this produces a warning, whereas before, you could do that. Weakmap implementation. Think of ORM caching entities that it manages. Something that can be garbage collected and it wouldn't like crater your application and cause it to fault or something. So if you just store some data, but you really don't care if it disappears, Weakmap is your friend. It's going to help make sure your application doesn't blow to memory usage. Now you can call class on objects. So if we have a class and then we want to say, hey, does this class instance of, and then, the class name, you can just call class like this now without actually having to call like get class on the object. Just, again, a little cleaner. Null safe operators. So no class operators were a great addition, right? Question mark, where you could just kind of like chain that. However, they don't work on method calls. So this addresses the issue. So you can see here at the top, before, we have to go start date, question mark. If that's a date time, then okay, call the method on it. Otherwise, return null. Now we can just do question mark and then put the pointer and then the method we want to call. If that is not an object, then it will not call that as datetime string method there. So again, cleaner code, good stuff. Not non-capturing catches. Before PHP 8, basically, it's like, something goes wrong, it will throw the exception, and then you have like a variable that you have to put this, exception variable we see here, $exception. That will be the exception. Let's say you don't do anything with the exception. You don't dump the message of it or anything like that. Now you can just put catch throwable, and you don't have to define a variable for it. You can just throw your log and keep moving on with your life, right?
I'm sorry, everyone. It's time. It's limited. Thank you for great talk, Joshua. Copeland. If you have any question or feedback, please share them on Discord channel. Please have a break until the next session.